So around the league, week 8, we're going to start it off by Amari Cooper being traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a first-round pick. Oakland loses their best offensive weapon. Marshawn Lynch may be done for the season, so his career is probably over with. So the Oakland Raiders are pretty much at the mercy of whoever's left on their schedule, which includes us twice. So other than that, we're going to jump right into talking about the Chargers. Again, you heard in my previous videos, these guys are talking about, oh man, Super Bowl favorites. Okay, well, we're going to break that down. Chargers have played 2 winning teams. 2. The rest of them are absolutely miserable that they beat. They lost to Kansas City, who's 6-1. They lost to the Rams, who are 7-0, which are arguably the 2 best teams in the NFL. Besides the Patriots, of course, who are up there with us. But you also have to take in consideration they lost by 10 or more points to both of us. The teams that they had beat, the Bills, who are 2-5, the 49ers, who are 1-6, the Raiders, who are 1-5, the Browns, who are 2-4-1, and the Titans, who are 3-4, which they squeaked by 1 point due to, Tennessee not wanting to take a chance in overtime. They wanted it all right there. The rest of their schedule, they have the Seahawks, who are 3-3, which, according to, this information, what I've gathered so far, anybody who is average is probably going to beat this team. Anybody that is above average is definitely going to beat this team. The Seahawks, I could see them losing to the Seahawks. They got Denver twice, who is 3-4 now. I definitely see them losing at Denver. They might win in Los Angeles. The Steelers are 3-2-1. They'll lose that ball game. The Bengals are 4-3. I still think they're going to lose to the Bengals. And the Ravens are 4-3, and they're not going to win that game either. So I see the Chargers ending up at 8-8 and possibly fighting Denver for a second place in the AFC West, depending on how Denver shapes up. I know they got some harder teams at the end of their schedule too. But we're not really concerned about Denver because they're at the low man of the totem pole. And the Raiders, we're not even going to talk about the Raiders because they'll be lucky if they win another damn game this year with what they got. So only being 3 minutes in, we're going to talk a little bit about the Rams because people are still saying they're the most overpowered team in the NFL. I beg to differ. The Rams have played absolutely nobody. I mean, the one team that they did play was the Chargers, who, by the way, had punked a bunch of other shitty-ass teams. So that doesn't tell me much, really. They beat the Vikings, who are decent. I will give them credit there. They beat them by 7. But that was also when they had every single one of their weapons. So I'll give them a little bit of credit where it's due because the Vikings seem decent right now. But they had all their weapons. And they're playing Green Bay this week, and they don't have all their weapons. So I think they're going to lose that one. So let's look at who the Rams have beat since they're undefeated. They beat the Raiders, who's 1-5. They beat the Cardinals, who are 1-6. They beat the Chargers, who are 5-2. That was one of their better wins. Again, the Chargers have played nobody. If they played some decent teams, they would probably easily be a 2-5 team or a 3-4 team right now. They beat the Vikings, which I already gave my opinion on that. They're 4-2-1. They beat the Seahawks, who are dead even at 3-3. They beat the Broncos, who are 3-4, and they beat the 49ers, who are 1-6. Again, I think the Rams are good. I just don't think they're that good. I definitely don't think they're Super Bowl compatible. They don't play good in cold weather conditions, which, by the way, they beat the Broncos by 3. And it was at Denver. And it was cold as hell that game. And they didn't have all their weapons. And Denver was a 2-4 team at that point. So let that sink in. The rest of their schedule. Oh, is it a tough one? I mean, it is, but it isn't at the same time. They got the Packers, who are 3-2-1, which I do believe are going to win this week because they barely beat a 500, or they beat a team, the only real winning team on there, the Vikings. They beat them by 7 points, but they had all their weapons. So I don't think they're winning this one. The Packers have a knack for beating teams, especially in this time of year. The Saints are 6-1. They're definitely going to lose that game. If they don't lose to the Packers, they're definitely getting beat by the Saints. The Saints are a top-notch team this year, and I think they're the best in the NFC. That's my personal opinion. The Seahawks, 3-3. The first meeting. The first meeting was at Seattle. They lost by 3. So it's possible they could win this one too. I mean, since it'll be at LA, they played most of their games in California this year, which is an advantage to them. The Chargers, the 49ers, their own home stadium, the Raiders. Moving on, the Chiefs, 6-1. I don't see them keeping up with the Chiefs. I know I'm a Chiefs fan, but the Chiefs are just too overpowered. They got so much power where the Rams don't. They say the Rams defense is so great, but they gave Denver 20, where we gave them 24. They gave the Seahawks, 31 points. They gave the Vikings 31 points. They gave the Chargers 23, as where we gave them 28. And they gave the Raiders 13 points, who are, 1-5, and the Seahawks only gave them 3. So defense being that good, well, Denver's a losing team. The Chargers have played a bunch of trash bags, but they're a winning team. Which, by the way, the Chargers only beat the 49ers by 2 with a backup quarterback. It's scary. Seahawks are a subpar 500 team who have played teams that aren't that great. They gave them 31. The Vikings are the only decent team on that list, and they gave up 31 to them. So explain to me how great their defense is compared to ours. And by the way, we're definitely going to get a lot more weapons back. And a lot of these games were played with their top-notch weapons in there. Donald, Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib. Those guys, Marcus Peters, he's starting to show why he got cut by Kansas City last year. Before these past 2 weeks, in the past 4 games before that, he gave up. He was targeted 17 times. They caught 14 of them for 255 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's ridiculous. Aqib Talib, he's been getting roasted by Kansas City for the past 3 years. I don't think anything's going to change. Marcus Peters, he's not good against speed. And I guarantee you they're going to be dumb as hell and put him up against Tyreek Hill. And Tyreek Hill's going to smoke his ass. Tyreek Hill used to smoke him back in training camp when he was a rookie. Anyways, moving on from that, they got the Lions, who are 3-3, who could beat anybody. The Bears, who are 3-3, who could beat anybody. They actually have a decent defense. They lost to the Patriots by 7 this week, and they threw a Hail Mary, and it ended up on the 1-yard line, so they had a potential to tie if they had more time. The Eagles, who are 3-4, the Rams will probably beat them. Depending on where that at. It's at Los Angeles, so yeah, they'll probably win. The Cardinals and the 49ers, they'll probably beat them. So let's say they lose to the Packers, they lose to the Saints, they beat the Seahawks, lose to the Chiefs. So that would be what, 8-3. They beat the Lions. Let's go out on a limb and say they lose to the Bears. That's 10-4. So they still finish at 11-4. I mean, they're still going to have a damn good season. But I do think they're going to lose 3 or 4 games along the line this year. If you look at it, they really got an easy schedule compared to everybody else. I mean, how can you not say they don't? So that's that. Just for conference sake, we're going to take a look at New England. They got to play the Bills. They're winning that game. They got to play the Packers, but it's at Foxborough. That's probably a game they're going to win, even though the Packers are a tough team. But that's a game they could possibly lose. That could go either way. But being it's in Foxborough, I think they're going to win. The Titans, even though it's at Tennessee, I don't see them losing that game. They play at the Jets. They'll probably beat them. They play the Vikings at Foxborough. The Vikings have a chance, but I still think New England's going to win. At Miami, they usually struggle at Miami. I think they'll lose that one, and they'll probably lose at Pittsburgh the next week too. I think it would be a very rare occasion if they lost 2 in a row, but it's possible. I'd say the Steelers are more likely than the Dolphins. And then they got the Bills and Jets. Kansas City's going to have to play absolutely stellar for the rest of the season to get home field advantage in the playoffs, especially over the Patriots. But if you look at Kansas City's schedule, we will be coming up in the easier part of our schedule here in the last run. Let's see here. Okay, so we got Denver this week, who's playing at Kansas City. I think we'll win that one. We're playing at Cleveland the next week. No reason why we shouldn't win that one. Then Arizona's coming to Kansas City. That's going to be a slaughterhouse. Then we're going to Mexico to play the Rams. That game could go either way. I do think Kansas City's more overpowered, but that game could go either way. Then we go to Oakland. We're going to smoke the shit out of Oakland. Baltimore comes to Kansas City. Now, I like Baltimore, but I think Kansas City's going to win this game just for the fact it's at Arrowhead and they play lights out at Arrowhead. So I think we win that one. Then the Chargers come to Kansas City. No doubt we're winning that one. Then we go to Seattle. That's going to be a tough one. And then Oakland comes to Kansas City for the last game of the season. Worst case scenario, we lose 2 of these last games, possibly to Seattle. Like I said, Baltimore's a good team, but I don't see us losing to them because their defense may be decent, but our offense is way better, and they can't seem to score more than 21 points unless they're playing Buffalo. At Seattle, that's a tough environment. We might lose that one. So worst case scenario, I see us going 13-3. Best case scenario, I see us going 15-1. Both are possibilities, and I'm not really worried about the NFC division because that whole conference is just, yeah, I said division, I meant conference. That whole conference is just kind of, whatever, you know. But man, yeah, I think it's going to be a duel to the final game. Worst case scenario with New England, I see them, worst case scenario, I say they lose to the Pack, they lose to the Vikings, and they lose to the Steelers. So I'd put them at, what? They got 2 losses. So 11-5, worst case scenario. Best case scenario, I still think they're going to lose to the Steelers, but best case scenario, say they win out, they go 14-2. So the only real leg up we have is the fact that they have 1 more loss than we do. So I think if we can stay on top of them, we'll win the entire conference. Again, some people say playing at home is a blessing and a curse for us, but dude, Mahomes just plays ridiculous at home. That whole team plays ridiculous at home. I mean, the defense is kind of lackluster on the road, but good Lord, when we play at home, we're just demolishing people. The 49ers was really the only bad game that we played at home that the defense played. They gave up 27 points, but other than that, they only gave Jacksonville 14 and they only gave Cincinnati 10. That's 24 points. And I mean, yeah, you could shit on Jacksonville and say they're playing terrible, which they are, but they were playing hot coming into our game. Cincinnati was playing hot coming into our game. They might fall off too. I don't know. But the attendance, just to give you an idea, when we went to play the Chargers, The attendance was 25,351. Our home games, San Francisco, 76,023. When Jacksonville came to town, 75,289. When Cincinnati came to town, 75,676. When we're playing at home, it's a consistent 75 to 76,000 people. That makes the difference. So that's been around the league. I'm going to call it quits here. Hopefully you guys gained some information from all this. I know I certainly did by looking at the schedules. And I'll have my Denver versus Kansas City preview